we're going to start getting into it, right? I hit the ground running on Monday morning, and then in the middle of the week, it's like the breaks. It's just weird.
Yeah,
My
it was
body has
strange.
it's just very strange.
It's good having a nice little break, but you just get pulled in so many directions. It makes it impossible to actually focus on business and whatnot. But I mean,
Yeah,
everyone needed a break, so
exactly. Let your brain rest a minute. All right, guys. I tell you what, I will just let people in. I hit record. I think you did as well, right?
yes.
Yeah, and we'll see because it's again a weird week, but we wanted to make sure that we absolutely got these in. I personally think I think you're going to enjoy this class. It's going to start bringing together the stuff that we've been talking about, right? It's going to start giving you a framework for how we can apply it. I was just thinking as we talk about the new year, and I know this sounds self-serving, and I don't mean it to come across this way. I think there's never a better time to start learning and putting into action the stuff we're talking about here. I really do. The more we see it, and I'm just talking like what when we talk not on camera, behind the scenes, right? And
Mhm.
I was just interviewed on a podcast, Cut the Tie, I believe was the name. Anyways, guys, really interesting. But the same themes, whether I try to make them come up or not, are coming up. Like people are a little bit lost. People need one person to come in and help organize all of that, all the stuff we've been talking about, and to be able to pull the levers that makes a difference in conversion. So with that said, let me share my screen. Let me just dive right in here and we will walk through this. And as always, please feel free during the class to raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hand, meaning just interrupt is what I actually meant to say, and we can walk through it. So I thought a really appropriate place to start was with a quick recap because, and by the way, if you see me, I hate doing this. I'm just letting people in. So I wanted to give us a quick reminder as to what we've been doing and where we're going with this, because I think it will all start to make sense. Like, some of well, where do we begin? What do we do? How do we apply this? And over this class, and then even more so in the next class, I think it will all come into clear picture so that everybody, no matter how you want to apply this, has a clear framework. So just indulge me for a quick recap, right? In class number one, we spent some time, and I think we probably should revisit it. What is and what isn't testing, right? I think that's important because if we're doing any of this, regardless of what end of the spectrum you are in with your clients, and you don't truly understand what a test is, what a test isn't, what a result is, what a result isn't, you're going to flounder, or the company is going to flounder. And again, just because it just came up, I'll just say, like, it's not only smaller companies, it's all the way up to, 8 and 9 figure companies, and they get themselves in trouble because nobody is working from the proper script, right? So to speak. So we talked about the ripple effect. Just as a reminder, everything that we test over here, this will come in as we go in through the framework, affects everything else throughout your funnel. This is why if we have companies that are just randomly making changes, and they do, and they or aren't properly determining whether that is a real change or not a real change, meaning is it a statistically significant change? Is it a change that's going to stick? They don't understand that it's literally affecting everything else that takes place in the funnel. And it is one of the reasons, there's a lot of them, but there's one of the reasons why companies sort of end up tying themselves in knots because they go with their gut instead of data. And they pretend like they're using data when they're really not. So the ripple effect was everything that we do over here affects everything else. And we showed you can and easily, like with Visio, see everything that's taking place at every step and the importance of that. Both the power of it, because we can test over here on a pre-sale page and have, and I forget the exact number was one of the examples I gave you, but have an 83% difference back here. And that's going to make the difference about scaling and not scaling. And if you're watching things happen at the end of the year and watching everybody like instill some hope and some people fear and you need their thing, but really the basics are what's going to carry you or the companies that you're working for, right? To understand that you can leverage everything that you're doing right and make it better. I'll just add to this, if you're not testing, you're falling behind. Markets are shifting constantly. Market awareness is shifting constantly. The host of the podcast that I was interviewed on, and I don't follow exactly there, they did something on LinkedIn. Anyways, and he was talking about, this is just a raw example because it just came up, and one of the ways that they would do it is when they teach, they would have everybody, like posts. And again, I don't do this on LinkedIn, so forgive me for not know. They followed all these things and they wouldn't DM directly and they all stopped working. Right? They all stopped working. Now their best results are going direct in the DMs. And well, I'm not ever going to be a guy that's going to chase anybody, and I don't think many of us here will. If you do, it's fine. But chase people. I think that the lesson there that we're learning is people become blind to tactics. And so this is stuff that applies to everything we're doing. I think we talked about words that people become sort of, I'm using the word blind to, right? That they start ignoring AI words, even if they don't know it's AI, they just start tuning it out, techniques. And so I think that one of the points I wanted to make here was that everything that we're doing should be a constant evolution, right? You should constantly, when I showed the research documents, which you can go even deeper in, should be a living document. And some of these points, I just don't want them missed. because I believe that they're so important, and you can express them when we get into and doing this, when we talk about what you're doing with clients and how to, like, not only get clients, keep clients, and this isn't trickery, but if they understand and they can be educated that this is going on in their market and you are a key driver of making sure that they're not only with those changes, but ahead of those changes and can help them through data backed up decisions. I think I know from our show, you have longevity and you're no longer going to be bidding on or taking on the next client. And we all know, we talked about that a little bit, that if you're going and want to work for clients, whether it's one, be a CMO of, or want to be for half a dozen, whatever it is, it's easier to build that relationship and trust once, right? That is probably your most expensive capital that you have when you're taking on a new client. Whether you're a media buyer, we talked about, have to produce all these ads, or you're a copywriter, building that trust is key. So I wanted to bring that up. We talked about testing being the ultimate leverage. It is, because nothing happens unless a test is made. And that could be a test anywhere that takes place in the funnel. It is your ultimate leverage. I know people throw around the idea of leverage in a lot of different ways. So it's not only your leverage, it's the leverage of whoever you are doing this for. We talked about the big guys. We talked about following people like Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and Alibaba and all the other companies, and the 10,000 experiment rule. And I think we have to open ourselves up, because sometimes we end up in our sort of little bubbles, right, in the marketing world, and understand that there's a whole world out there that is approaching this 100% differently than most of your clients. So if you can apply some of that to your clients, there's a reason that they emphasize it, right? It's not made up, right? We can leverage this. We talked about the value of full stack marketing and we talked about the idea of market perception. I just want to hit on that again so we know why we're here. That market perception, whether we like it or not, is changing and has been changing. It's changing if you're a media buyer. It's changing if you are a copywriter in a lot of different ways. The way I sort of describe it, and this is just one big bubble, we probably could have a roundtable discussion and talk about this literally for hours, is that it's a commoditization, whether that's real or not real. We all know there are better copywriters than other copywriters. That's just fact, right? Generally, many times, the best aren't the ones that are out there promoting themselves as being A-list copywriters. I'm sure a lot of people on this call know that. The same thing with media buying, right? There are better, but it doesn't matter if the market is perceiving you or your profession as a commodity. And so the idea, that's where full stack marketer comes in, is that they desperately need someone that knows how to pull those levers. They desperately need somebody that can stop all of this up and down that takes place and can guide that ship. Even if it's one person that they can turn to get through all the noise, depending on the organization that's taking place in their particular companies. Put yourself in the shoes of an average, decent sized offer owner and what they're dealing with. Many times, multiple ad agencies, more than one, many times, not always. Telling and pulling and giving them many times, not always, incorrect information, because they have, and I don't mean this in a negative way, a certain agenda. A copywriter who's saying you need to test this offer, which is great, but then they have data, people pulling data from different scenarios. There's infighting. It's the old adage, right? Who is causing the ups and downs? And when they go through, which may be just a normal, let's say, time of the year, and something drops, the crap hits the fan, so to speak, right? And nobody's taking responsibility. And so the offer owner, and I'm talking about the CEO, the offer owner, they'll describe it many times as babysitting, right or wrong, right? Like you ask owners what they hate the most, what they dislike the most of their business. You guys may find differently. I'm open there, but that's the number one thing that they despise, right? That no matter how skilled, no matter at what level they bring people in, they always seem to be playing what I'm calling the babysitting game, right? We talked about the fact, and this is going to be really important as we get into this class and next class, the idea that everything, and it sounds simple when I say it, and so I didn't want it missed, everything is either increasing or decreasing conversions. 100%. If two words, and I gave an example from the accidental two words, and I just bring this up not because two words are impressive, and got a 15% boost, and all that's great and makes for a nice story. But if you understand that two words made the difference of an accidental two words, 15% increase in actual conversions, then you start to have an understanding that everything that's being thrown on a page or not on a page is affecting conversions, right? Many times people are, I guess it would be called maybe, selling themselves out of a sale, right? If I wanted to equate this to offline sale where they have a salesperson that can't stop talking and they end up unselling. It's the same thing here. We just have to understand that. We talked about the fact that it was the relationship between the variables. And I'll show you a Visio, and I'll give you this class. I deliberately wanted to make value no matter what you utilize, but I'll show you how you can leverage that. It is a huge lever. We get the story of the wolves in Yosemite, but it's the idea that nothing exists in a vacuum. I mean, how many times do we walk into a room and just focus on one piece? It's like how it all works together. The only time you end up focusing on that piece is when it just sticks out like a sore thumb and doesn't work, right? So that's sort of the idea. And then we gave you the testing calculator bot. And I hope as you move forward, you utilize that. That is a real tool that you can use, because even though we're all dealing with very, very smart people, and so we tend to assume or forget that they need help. What I mean by that is we assume that we go in and we say words like, well, we should be able to increase your conversion, so we'll work towards increasing conversion 30%. They don't understand what that really means. All they are trained or triggered to, their sort of reflex, survival reflex is, how much is this going to cost me? Right? And we want to reposition everything as an investment. Now, I know that's like, when I think of that, I think of the old, like, sort of used car salesman, but and I mean this because everybody that is selling any kind of services is trying to sell their services or throwing that out. From my point of view, this is the only one where you actually can show in black and white that they are making an investment, that there is a return on investment. If you go into a company and you increase, I showed examples between 30 to more than 400%. But if you went in and all you did in the first month for most of the companies and got them a 12% increase in sales, that, I say all, most of you will be paying for your services for the next year, because remember, that's not a one time. That is something that they should be reaping the benefits of monthly. And so Dave and Jason, took what I was doing, created a lot of bots. That's valuable. You can do that on a conversation with somebody. You can flip it. It looks simple, but you can flip the conversation from a cost to an expense, and maybe we'll lean into that a little bit more when we get into the different ways that you can acquire customers and actually put this to work.
I'll
The
tell you
next,
something also real quick. What I've noticed the CEOs like to see is a sort of one pager, like one page that really lays out what is the end result of working with you specifically. And that's what I feel like the value comes in with a testing calculator, because it gives you that report that you can pretty much put on a page and send to a CEO or to a business owner and say, look, this is what it could potentially look like for what you're paying for. And it's very specific. So I've noticed that when deals don't get closed, you may be talking to a CEO or a business owner, and you have like a very vague kind of result you're offering. But once it's on, once you take that and you just put it on a one pager, they can see it. It's as clear as day. This is what it looks like at month one. This is what it looks like at month two. At month three, if this grows by this, it's going to grow this by this. And that's what that calculator does. And I've noticed this, that one of my secrets to getting CMO gigs has been being able to lay that out in like a one or two page in general. Not necessarily the same format you have there that we created, but I think that they would go for that. But they need to see like a one pager or a two pager full of, hey, this is exactly what I'm paying for. This is what I'm getting. It's not really salesmanship or anything like that. It's just here's an end result, or here's the vision that I'm offering you, or here's the end result I'm offering you, pretty much, and here's what it specifically is. And that's what I was just wanted to say real quick that they respond well to.
I love that you did. And again, I just happened to be coming off podcast to here, so I'm sorry, I need to let somebody else in. My apologies. So I happen to be coming off, and they brought up the same thing. If you're even in the larger the company, the more important that is, right? And so if you understand what the role is, I'm just adding to what you said of the people that you're talking about, right? They have to justify their jobs. You may not be dealing with the CEO, but ultimately the CEO is going to make a decision, and he's making a decision on one simple fact, right? If you can sell him savings and profits, then you just won. That's what they're doing. They're buying money. I mean, if we really want to simplify it, it is true. Most of their decisions, they're mostly willing to make an investment, as long as, of course, we need the other factors. We need trust. That's what will give you, I believe here, and we'll talk about that. But to your point, you're selling profit. Yeah, when I brought up, even like you talk about, well, there'll be the thing that people buy back time. Yeah, but the bigger you get, they look at time as money. So ultimately, this is a simple equation. It really is simple. It's, you're only paying me X, right? But your return is here. And I'll just add to this, the legitimate real return is so much larger than any of you are going to be charging. And you think you'll be happy with what you're charging, the numbers just make sense. But I love the concept of the one pager, because why? They don't have a lot of time. They're being pitched all the time. Those numbers will then allow, if let's take a really big company, their directors or whoever's there to bring it to them and to be able to show. And then they see that return. Sure, they may have questions. They may want to go back in order for, but that is the basis for everything. And I love that you brought it up because again, that's what makes this nice. And everybody on this call has various experiences that you can lean into. So I love that. It's
I'll
something
tell you one more thing about it too, I've seen this. I've seen big ticket closers. Some of them have what is called what I call the math close, and that's what they use every time. Is basically that whole testing calculator that we're giving you guys. They use that math close to show people you're going to put in X and you could potentially get Y based on X, Y, Z, and one, two, three. And they see the math, and I call it the math close. I don't know if you guys have worked with a closer that has the math close, but I've seen people do pretty well with it.
Yeah, and I think that it depends on who you're dealing with, but the people we're dealing with are business owners. So the math close is absolutely going to work, right? The only time it won't work is if they just think you're full of BS and you haven't built. But even though everything is built on emotion, I'll just add this. So like the director wants to justify their making this up, justify their job, look like a hero to the company, get a raise because he brought in XYZ that ended it, increase the business. So there is definitely emotion there, but the emotion is backed up by the numbers. So I love that. I love it. As much as we talk, no matter who we're dealing with, if they're really, really busy, they just want to see the numbers. And you go back to when you say the math close, and I'm not exactly sure, how they're doing it when they're doing it, but as long as it makes logical sense, it builds your credibility. And
Yeah.
I think just to bring this full circle, what I said before, yeah, you just don't want, everybody knows here as copywriters, as people that are writing ads and sometimes forget, you don't want to leave that to the imagination. You can leave maybe the profitability and that you could do more than, and they can imagine what it's like working with you, but you want to lay out, right?
Mhm.
If we accomplish X, I'll just give you another way to use it, just top ahead, and we'll probably lean into this. If you put up, and I usually put, if we're doing it, you can do a very low like return on investment, but then sort of that gradualization. So imagine if we got X, and then you can then work it backwards. Let's say that didn't take a single test like I'm showing you here. And I think I probably mentioned it. Let's say that 30% that you see took 3 tests or 4 tests. What does that look like to your bottom line? Reminding them through that, remember, you just got yourself, your company a raise that continues on, and we're building on that. My services should be, in essence, not only free, but profitable, as you can see here. So anyways, I love it. I think it's a really important point. And the reason I wanted to lean into it, and I love that you helped me lean into that a little bit, Jason, is because sometimes some of these tools can think of, well, I got another tool to dust off. I really think that that is very, very valuable.
No, I
So
feel like in terms of getting business and in terms of keeping your business that you have with somebody or proving your worth, it's invaluable in my opinion because all the math closes in terms of getting an account or whatnot is literally what that does. It just lays out here's what you're going to put into it, and here's what you get back. Like, and it literally just mathematically lays it out, and it helps it it helps them have an aha moment that it's worth it. And a CEO sits there, things come across his desk all day. He has to make all these different various decisions. He doesn't necessarily have very much time to even make a decision. He or she. But if something like a one pager or two pager lands on their desk and it shows the math, this looks like it could be a good investment. Okay, let's do it. Boom, it's done. That's kind of how it is. Or if you're working under CMO, for example, and you have to justify your worth, you can use that as a report, and they can literally see that. They can see your worth, and then it's not a subjective thing where because these marketing teams that you're on, they're pretty much like high school plus money. Like they're very subjective, and people are cutthroat and whatnot. Especially if revenue is going like this, then people get even more cutthroat. So it just helps to have something like the calculator, I believe, to show here. I mean, here's my impact, right? Like here's my potential impact. Here's my impact. Here's what I did last month. You could even calculate that and show that. So it's all huge. They want to see the numbers, and they don't really have time to process all the high school games. They just need to see the truth, right? It just helps
by the
again.
way, you can do that in a I'll use your term, high schooly way. So we talked about when we're giving updates and reports, we're screenshotting, we don't do anything fancy. But it helps to extrapolate what they got. It helps to keep a ongoing report of your tests. They don't all have to be winners or moves to do that. So that when you are dealing with them, they are always seeing a report. And now let's assume a test didn't win. That's also 100% fine because you are then adding without long writing, without these literally take 2 minutes, what you learned and what the next step is going, right? So as long as you are showing your value, which they generally don't see. And when I mean going to what you said, it's sort of this infighting, right? One of the problems, depending on how, and it's a problem that this makes easy to solve. In fact, I have something on this before I jumped into that we'll dive in maybe a little bit more, but it's a really, really good point. It's very easy to constantly justify your worth. If you're buying ads, and I don't mean to pick on this, and it's not ROIing, they're blaming you. And there's not a whole lot you can do. If you're showing, listen, we're trying to figure out what's working and what's not working. and nope, this test didn't, but this is what we're doing. You're actually on the other side of things, just to expand upon this a little bit, we're growing your business. How many people are really, aside from throwing off random ideas and every week maybe changing or doing, you'll see a lot of this, like people just trying to throw out, constantly opening up their mouths and, bad ways or good ways just to be heard. Like I've mentioned before, being on a call and people randomly throwing off what should be changed on a page. You see this all the time. You should make this always feel, because it's true, not just a feeling, but remind that you're there, the one building their business. So
Yeah.
I really love
I'll,
that a lot.
I'll say one more thing about this. So I think a good way to think about it is that most of this is subjective and it's like very gut feeling when you're on these teams and whatnot. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the conversation away from that into the objective, factual, logical side of things with numbers, because that's irrefutable, unquestionable proof that's working.
Yep.
But these teams, though, they like to operate in a very emotional way, a very high school kind of way. So, it's a classy way to do it, and it's just pushing toward the objective side of it as much as you can. I would say that's my strategy on
And I love it. We talked about that a little bit. I think it was in the last class, and we'll talk about it even a little bit more later there. Is like I always think, and this is a really, really bad example, so forgive me. I don't mean to be crude or whatever, but I always remember the story of the howler monkey, right? That they say, and the one with the smallest, we'll say, putt balls screams the loudest, and I always there, and it's the same way on these teams. Meaning, it's just, and I don't mean that in a brave macho. I'm talking men and women. Meaning, if they don't have anything to offer or trying to justify their position, they're doing it. So you can do it in a very, very quiet way and a very powerful way, and you don't have to talk a lot to do it. It also, and you're just reminding me of this, is that I find times, and I think I talked about this in the last, but it's worth us bringing this full circle, is that you will end up where people are blaming. Like you'll routinely a team meeting and they'll go through and the media buy will going on and it's because of X, Y, and Z. And you'll then talk and then you pull up your report and say, well, that's really not what we're seeing. And you can do so in a very classy way. And I can't tell you how many times that just stops people in their tracks.
Yeah.
So
That's the
it's
unquestionable proof I'm talking about. That once you have that, it's not a conversation anymore, whatever
yeah.
that conversation may be.
And think about it. We're just to there. We talked last time, like you had mentioned, as a copywriter, and that's what we're talking about here on building. But just to bring this back, that you have a meeting and a media buyer is giving you those numbers. That's where this becomes super important. So I'll flip on, but I love it. I think it's really, really important. That's why I'm going over this recap. I don't want things to be missed. We're going to build on this. We talked about in class 2 to 3 weeks of research in 2 hours. That ties into what we're talking here, right? We defined what a full stack marketer is, right? That the rainmaker, the connector of the team, whatever you want to call it, right? It's some people will call it, maybe you do have the CMO role. What you really need is the perception, and that will make you'll be the go-to guy, right? You'll have people asking you to be CMO even before, right? I've had people, we don't want any part of it. Like they had, send us I think I showed this in first class, an email, and they want the email to be part of their company to be listed as CMO for their investors. I don't care if you get that or not. I always say put it in my paycheck. I don't need any part of that. But the idea here is how much easier will your life be in whatever level or whatever you want to define yourself as, if that's the way you're looked upon. It's hard to shake when the CEO of company and the investors, which I have in several examples, where they will trust you over anything else after a bit. It doesn't take long. You build that trust because you're not the one yelling and screaming.
Yeah, if they see the numbers, they feel a sense of certainty working toward you, working with you, I believe. And you'll either be offered that role or you're in position to just send them a proposal saying, "Hey, you just want me to go ahead and take the ship here, I'll go ahead and take it." So I mean, there's a couple different ways. Like when I've come into companies and gotten CMO roles, I came in as a smaller position and I was either asked or I just sent them a proposal saying, "Look, I'll just be your CMO. Like let me handle it." Right? And
Because they clearly, and you're not doing anything wrong, and I don't know about this specific situation, but believe me, they understand the issues and problems you're in, and you'd only have to be on 1 or 2 team meetings to be able to feel that and see that. I can take this off your hands is a really attractive situation, right? I see this is happening and this is happening and this is the reason. It doesn't take a lot of selling, right? This is why, by the way, and I'll probably talk, we're spending so much time and because on this big lever, CRO, because it's not about the title CRO, it's about the ability to move that needle, like beyond where you can move it. And you need to have that skill on top of your current skill in order to help them move the needle. Because all of this, none of it's BS, none of it's positioning. It's all about really about trust, I believe. So we talked about, we went into some specific rules for the test about uniques, minimum sample sizes, other metrics, right? We understand what is a test and what we should be looking at. We understand that many of the examples that are thrown out there, many of the companies, and again, I have fast growing companies that are measuring their success by opt-ins or click-throughs. They are doing it daily. And you can't eat click-throughs, you can't eat opt-ins. And if we remember the sample case study I provided you to, and I forget the exact numbers on this, but they would have thrown out the test right at the beginning. If they then went by checkouts, they would have chosen something that ended up losing money. If they're able to see the results throughout the entire funnel, what ends up happening was really a 430% increase in real revenue. And I think this is problematic of teams that we're talking about, problematic of technology, problematic of people looking at the wrong things. There is a lot of people going like this. There is many times a media buyer, maybe it's because they don't have access to certain things, but they're looking at numbers that aren't accurate. So this isn't only about the lesson of understanding the conversions and how everything you're doing is affecting every step of the funnel. It's also a broader discussion to understand that I don't care what tech stack they're using, many times people are looking at the wrong numbers, and we'll talk about that, right? We discussed the sort of general cliche, right, that you've heard from some of the greats from years ago, right? Copywriters. And like, if I had X amount of time, I'd spend, whatever it was, 80, 90% of it sharpening the axe and the other 10% cutting down the tree. That is where everything comes from, the research. That is something that I mentioned a little bit earlier, should be a living document. It is changing. What words are they responding to? What are they seeing in the marketplace? All of this is very, very important. We talked about something I talk about all the time. Different is better than good. And I've seen some people, they are post about this. I just want to make clear from my perspective, and I'm not saying a certain word doesn't help conversions, but this isn't about a certain word. It's not about using the word different. It's about truly being different. It's about, and this doesn't mean wild and it doesn't mean crazy. It means everything from, and I'm picking on the financial niche because I've seen this where you go in and everybody has basically the same opt-in. Give me your email and I'm going to give you X. And even though their offers are slightly different, right? That they tend to look the same. They tend to use the same colors. They tend not to get outside their own heads, which is something we talked about with semantic separation. The point is that different is better than good. And there's a lot of, I want you to be good, but you need to think in terms, and this ties into the semantic separation discussion, which I apply to everything, that you want to be different. You should be offering something that feels different. Preferably it is better, faster, a different way to solve their problem, a different way to be looking at their problem, a different look and feel. And when you have everybody following the so-called leader blindly, you're not going to get anywhere. So we talked about that, right? Should a mind map of everything that we should know about our prospect, right? We went deep. We went to the point you can get a lot and enough of information in 2 hours, but I went through and you can see if you want to relook at it at class 2, all the things that you can truly learn. And it truly is important. It can be applied to your ads. It should be. It can be applied and should be applied to your pages. And we started talking about in the last class, like how do you take these ideas and start through semantic separation, coming up with different things that you can test. But the idea here is its kernel, its seed always comes from research. And my pet peeve, and I'm not saying there are people that understand a market, but one of my pet peeves is that people say, I don't have to do research because I understand human nature. And that's great. I think, and some of them very successful at what they do. And the point is, markets are changing and shifting fast. I use that LinkedIn example from the last call I just had on the podcast. Things are changing. What your market, your clients' markets are seeing are changing. What they are building up blindness to is changing. And so the only way to stay ahead of that is to constantly be asking yourself and looking the overarching question, what is that leading neck problem that my clients are trying to resolve? How are other people trying to say that they can resolve them, right? We can dig into that. We talked about, shared some really simple tools to getting this data fast. Use it all the time. Personally use it all the time. I am not even a little bit exaggerating that we had 2 people that would spend a minimum of 2 weeks going through and getting all that manually. We still, because we're obsessive, we go and we do manual on top of it. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that if you use the tools that we talked about there and actually do that, regardless of what end you're going into that business, you will know more about that business than the business knows. And I know this from very, very professional companies, people that understand, and where a CEO will say things such as, and I'm just paraphrasing, yeah, you get us, you get it. That's what I meant. And he's telling his other team. Like, it all came from, not because I know everything about everything, it's because we did the research, and then you combine that with your current knowledge and what we're talking about semantic separation, you have an idea as to where the levers are in that business, right? And we shared, again, I love it, a research agent. So by the way, thank you everybody for bearing with me. I hope you find that what we're doing here by recapping will get us to a point so everybody understands why we're doing what we're doing today. Like everything actually is building on each other, and it doesn't take weeks and weeks and weeks to implement any of this. It just takes the knowledge. So you can do what we're talking about relatively quickly. I think, and I mentioned this last week, and I hope that anybody that was here or that watched it um, really understands and doesn't pass this over, that it was the most important class today. I do not talk about this often. I've never taught it the way I taught before. I never did it to the extent, and especially what I'm going to be doing today, right? That we started talking about, so I won't get into the sphere, but the importance of CMO leadership and controlling the room, so to speak, right? Based upon data, and the research doc. You have the research doc plus the data, you're winning because nobody else. We just had a conversation naturally at the beginning of this a little bit ago about how you do that. All of this puts you in control, not in a bad way, in a good way, right? You have all of this on your side. So I think even if you were going to propose, I'll make this up, beyond a CRO type of thing for copywriting, if you want to propose something that they're not used to, and how many times do you guys get pushback as a copywriter because it's outside their comfort zone? Well, have the data and the research to push back as to, in the right way, why you're doing it. But the point was, we've talked about it here, that CMO, full stack leadership, all of this stuff comes from the data. So I won't dive into that too much. It is important for you to control the data. I just want to make that clear, and we'll talk about that with Visyopt. But the problem is that many times they're running through multiple numbers, multiple different sheets, different places where they're getting the numbers. Many times you aren't privy to the numbers, as we've talked about previously, right? You have somebody filling you in and you're taking their evaluation of it. I'm not a data guy, which sounds really, really, I'll probably have it somewhere again in the presentation, really weird, from a guy who built a software company that's all about data, right? I consider a creative, a marketing guy, but you have to understand the data in order to be able to make intelligent decisions, and more importantly, to back up your decisions. I think this is going to become even more and more important. We have so much noise. That's part of what we're talking about. Like I talk about noise and experiments. We're talking about noise in the marketplace where everybody is like that, forgive me for my maybe really crude there, power monkey, is standing from the mountaintops telling you to look at me and look at my secret. I literally saw a post, and I don't think I really don't like that, about a secret traffic source. Now, does anybody really think that there's any kind of secret anything? There isn't, right? But everybody's sort of screaming for the mountaintops, looking at a way to get attention. And I think, and this goes a little bit off of this discussion, but I still think it's relevant. I think that the way in the world of AI, which we're all leveraging and all utilizing, is authenticity. And authenticity comes with no BS. And no BS comes from understanding the numbers, which I just think is super important. And you will catch the attention and keep the attention, I believe, of the type of client, the type of people that you want to work with. I believe there's a difference, right? You don't want to be in this mix of sort of high school. We talked about the top three CRO mistakes. There are more, but we went into some kind of depth and how we can solve most of those. This is legitimately the way most testing is being done. When we talked about those mistakes, I can tell you I have yet to come across a company that isn't doing one or all three of those mistakes, even if they have a CRO in charge. That's great news, because if you're willing to do it right, you're going to get real results, right? If you recall, and this wasn't puffery, there are people that are, that have had and hired CRO firms and got nothing, right? Meaning multiple, some of the names that you know, and it's the leverage, right? So at any rate, we went through some examples. We gave some reference
Yeah, I
documents.
will say something real quick that I think that's one of the biggest reasons why the CEOs and the founders will end up turning to you and asking you to be CMO or being really responsive to a proposal as CMO, because they do go through so many CROs and so many media buyers and so many copywriters, and they're bleeding money all over the place. But when you can come in and you can show on like a one page or two page or a report that you're actually getting progress,
Yep.
they love to see that, and then they're way more responsive to what you have. But it's just because they, one of the reasons is because of the pain of going through so many different people who
Yep.
maybe some of them may have been good, but not able to really even convey their value. Because there's two parts to it. It's selling yourself to get into the role, and then maintaining that with the same sort of strategy.
And I agree. I don't think it's about, just to be clear, fancy reports, because a lot of people spend too much time and too much effort doing that, and that's all they are, sort of like a paper tiger, right? It is about backing up your decisions before, during, and after. And I think that that's what we're referring to here. And I think you'll stand out. I know you'll stand out. So all of this, and what I talked about last class, and semantic separation, really, it's part of a large part how we're able to go in when somebody didn't see anything, how we're able to go in and take where they think that they're, in quotes, think and feel that their site is fully optimized and get increases between 32% to as high as 418% a single test. That doesn't mean we're magic. It doesn't mean it happens all the time. That's how we're able to do it. It's how we're able to go in. It's the foundation of what we're talking about. And so if you have passed that class by or just listen superficially, I really, really think it's worth diving into. And again, we gave a bot that is, I believe, very, very, will be very valuable. In fact, somebody had posted they'd utilize, which I love seeing, by the way. So I want to talk about what we're going to talk about today is a step-by-step framework. But before we get there, I just want everybody to have an understanding as to what we're doing. Because, and just for my own, just so you have understand where I'm coming from. We've gone over a lot of stuff, and I'm repeating this, but I just don't want stuff to get lost in the translation or missed over. Literally is being designed so that every class builds on the next and you have a complete framework. And my goal for everybody on here is to not question where they're going to go, what they're going to do, and how they can get repeatable results. So what we're going to do here is expand upon the concept of semantic separation, but we're going to do so in the confines of a framework. And it's going to be fun, right? We're going to go through it and allow you to apply it. I don't know if he's on the call, but I'll thank him anyways. Nathan gave permission to go through his page, his site, and apply it. So I think and I hope it will be useful for you to not only get the idea of the framework, but we can apply it to what I'm seeing on his pages. And I know that when you can apply something, it hopefully helps it stick, it helps it become real. So it's not about his page. It's not, I just say this, it's not about a specific type of page. It's not about a specific funnel. It's not, well, my client is a VSL funnel or I'm running an econ. It's all the same. It's the exact same steps. And I'll give you a little tidbit as to what we're going to do, just where this is going. And there. So we're going to have a 5-step framework. I'm pretty sure the 5th step, which will be worthwhile, we'll do in the next class and continue on this. At the beginning of each class, we will do more CRO, some stuff that you can directly apply, right? Beyond now that you understand the framework. And I said this before, we'll do more breakdowns. We'll get everybody's questions answered, whether they've already been posted to the group or you want to bring them up live here. Very, very open to that. But I say this previously, that if you can't get a result, then nothing else makes a difference, right? In other words, if we go here and we make a whole class and clearly, like, Jason and I can talk about how to get clients, and I know that's where people focus, and I want to assure you, we're going to go over that. But, and Jason, you may have a different take on this because we haven't discussed this, which is fine. But I have always been a believer that when you get results, it's really, really easy to get clients. Most of the people on this call have gotten clients. So what if we could take the best of these clients that you have or want to get, and we're just able to increase your worth? What if, if you're a media buyer, instead of getting a 90-day because they're putting all their eggs into the media buying basket, you can talk turkey with the numbers and be able to show them how their page is converting and where the actual problem is actually coming from. And not just calling their baby ugly, but showing them that you can work with them to fix it, right? If you are a copywriter and you are writing a copy even on an ongoing basis for a client, and they're looking at you, which they will, as an expense, or some other copywriters knocking on their door, and you are having a conversation that, this is my experience, you know what I can do, but this is V1. I want to help you bring this copy to life. I want to help you make sure that the copy I am providing to you works, right? Not with a false, like I'm going to work with you forever until this is profitable. No, a legitimate, listen, with all of my years of copy experience, this is what I'd like to do. This is really what you need to do. They're going to be very, very receptive of that. And so I just want to make clear, I think I went a little bit off, but the number one thing is, if you can get results, that's why we're doing this. If you can get results, and all of you can, the rest becomes easy. It really does. I really believe it's not about tricks. It's not about some kind of fancy clothes. It's not about everybody hopping on and pounding their chest about, CRO and all that kind of things. I think there's a much better way. So we'll talk
Scott,
about, yeah.
just real quick, I just want to dovetail on this. One of the first things I learned when I started doing client work was, if you can bring in more money than you cost, they will do everything to keep you around that they possibly can.
Yep. Return on investment. We were talking about, and by the way, I'm glad to see you're on. We were talking about that a bit later. It's a really good point, right? But they have to see it. And they don't need you talking about it or promising, right? If you are getting them a return on investment, if dollars out, dollars in are much more than dollars out, you have, like you say, client for life. But you don't want, the only twist I'm going to give on that is, you don't want to be only as good as your last win. here's the problem. If you're in certain professions and certain copy, right, and we don't understand that, that is a V1, you wrote great copy. If you're not around where you don't have, with the word that I use, control to do this, and this takes control, that's where it puts you in a whole different position, right? We talked a little bit about, like, if it's copy, well, what if your copy really is working? What if it was not a matter of your copy? What if it was a matter of the targeting? What if there's something else going on? So yes, very, very important. What we'll talk about is how to become the full stack marketer. We'll deer into there. We can share, and I want to share something at one point. I promised to do this before last class, as to how we apply and we teach the media team to apply what we're talking about to ads. It won't be a long session. If you do ads, if you don't do ads, it doesn't matter. It's following the same type of principles that follows a structure. I will mind you just a little bit that we talked about, and I gave a couple of examples of friends of mine that would raise their hand and say, absolutely, says me. Even avid testers, there are usually no real strict rhyme or reason why they're approaching it. That's why results are all over the place. But we're learning here structures and ways of approaching this that I think will benefit. So I hope that was helpful. This, I don't have to talk about later because I think it just came up naturally, but I'll just bring it up. I wanted to go through, and we had a great conversation, so I'm just happy about it. So I'll just touch upon this now, and we can add to it, right? We had a conversation about data. And I mentioned, right, we trust ideas, but we verify with data. There's no such thing as gut. I hear it all the time. We talked about it a little bit. When somebody says the word, I think, when somebody says my gut, I've seen in the past, run. It's just not ever a good scenario. I gave an example that just popped in my head, but I'll bring it because I think it's a great story that, I have no problem. We're getting feedback from everybody on the team. And somebody says, my gut tells me, or I've seen, that should be part of the overall. We usually set up a document and we say, listen, we want feedback from everybody. And it's just like a throw all, anything you see from customer service on, but that should be tested and verified with data. Because I've even seen, and we talked, I think it was in the last class, about biases, that even after testing, even after the data, it's human nature, but that should have worked, but should we take any of that and combine that with what you did? People want to hold on to their ideas so bad. So we're talking about data a lot, not because you have to become a data nerd at all. It's about understanding that we're in direct response business, no matter what you're selling there, no matter what's being sold. And data ultimately is what's going to make it rock. So I'd already mentioned this. I'm not a data person, which is weird. So I'll just touch upon some of these things.
Hey, Scott, quick
Yeah.
question. Are you meaning to share your screen? Because I wasn't sure if.
Yep, it's shared. People can see it, right?
Okay.
Can you guys see it?
Yeah. Okay. I guess I got the wrong thing up. Never mind. Disregard.
Okay, no, I'm glad you brought it up. I've done that too. I think like Zoom now gives you tabs, so maybe.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Works. Thanks.
No, my pleasure. So and I'm sorry you haven't seen the others, but that's okay. You'll be able to follow back on it if you have any questions. So we talk about this. So I'll just hit some examples, and then we'll go through this quick. I want to get into the meat of it. Trust intuition should generate hypothesis, right? All that means is if you have a gut feeling, if your clients have a gut feeling, then generate a hypothesis from it. I don't have to go, my experience says X. Okay, great. Let's turn that into a hypothesis that we can turn into a test, right? Data validates or refuses hypothesis. This is what we've been talking about, right? I don't have to be right. You don't have to be right. We talked about growing. I don't care if the idea came from a customer service person on their team, the CEO or media buyer or whatever. If they're seeing things, then let's test it and validate it. Or what you'll learn here is usually when somebody gives you an idea, there is many ways to break it down semantically and test it in many different ways. Like I throw out this one example, but because it's just so obvious. But if somebody says, test a testimonial, well, okay, which testimonial? Does it have pictures or doesn't have pictures? Do we include the full name? Does the testimonial have a headline or doesn't have a headline? If it has a headline, what type of headline? Like it's all about the pieces. So when somebody gives you a good idea, we can dive into that. And you can test and it may work and it may not work, but everything should be validated, right? We can prioritize tests with measurable impact. I don't have to go into this right now. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go through some of this, right? There's always hidden opportunities. Every test will lead to another test. It just will. Things will happen at open. You'll be able to see without question what people are responding to. In Visio, we can do a step deeper. We have what we call variable influence. And so when we're doing tests that have multiple variables and variable versions, we can actually see which versions of which variables are impacting conversions the most. You know what to lean into. And it is not always what you think, right? It's not always just the headline, right? It is, you're able to see what is creating people to respond, which then is going to lead you down into a further road, right? We're just talking about combining intuition with iterative taste testing, right? It's not just one test. It's not, did it work, didn't work. This is something that we've just been talking about a lot. So I'll just just hit on it for put one more bullet point on this. This is keep everybody focused on results. This is what we've just been talking about, right? It isn't about likes or leads or opt-ins or whatever else somebody, or click-through rate or any other metric, right? Keep people focused on results. And people, as we mentioned, and I love your example, like, the way you described it as high school, right? A bunch of high school, trying to puff out their chest and do. This is just, if you get one thing out of, and I hope you're going to get a lot more out of today, it's about, keep everybody focused on results. And I honestly think, and I know it sounds something so simple, but that is the key, right? If you're the guy that's keeping people, guy or girl that's keeping people focused on the results, different, right? So we can start with intuition. We want to test, don't assume, should be the new mantra. Iterate based upon insights, data over ego, right? We've been talking about this, and balance, trust, and proof, right? Believe in creativity, but always verify. And I knew that sounds simple. However, as we pointed out from me and Jason's different experiences, it's typically not followed. It's just typically not followed. So what I want to switch to and stay on track is I want to talk about a step-by-step framework, right? And I call it the 5-step semantic separation framework. We talked about previously the importance. It's just what guides everything we do, right? And I won't go into everything because we went deep last time. But you are going to get a different, just to highlight this before we dive in, you're going to get a completely different result from a picture image of a woman versus an image of a man, versus the image of an older woman versus the image of an older man, versus a younger man and woman together versus an older man and woman together, versus them suffering with the problem versus them seeing the result. All of these are semantically very different in our minds, right? We talked about getting outside our own heads, and we want to apply that to everything. And I hope out of that and out of this, you're going to learn that there is so much more that can and should be tested. But don't worry, because we're giving a framework for creating this, and a framework, even though that probably will go on to the next class, of now prioritizing. And it was one of the questions, and it's been asked here, and I just want to let people know at the outset, and was asked in the group, like, how do you prioritize? And I will get there. Next class, we'll use a framework for deciding, out of all this great stuff that you can test, how do you decide what to test first? It's going to depend upon, what technology you have available to you, but you can have VisiOpt available to you, but I just want everybody to have a simple framework to bring this all together. And Nathan, I had mentioned before you came on, I'm going to weave this, and you were kind enough to let me utilize your page. I just did a disclaimer. Me and Nathan are talking about something. Nathan's a great copywriter. We're talking about something a little bit deeper here than just the conversion rate that he needed. He was having troubles getting shut down on this. That's a different conversation. But his page still makes a perfect illustration as to how we can go through this 5-step framework. So I'll just let you know, felt like I guess the word was, and so you can feel it, his hands were tied, which is fine. So not a reflection on his ability for copy, but just a way that we can all approach and sort of unwind what's working, what's not working. It can be applied again, whether the page is working phenomenally or it's not. Where do we begin? So step 1, identify variables. And I am going to this you will all have a copy of. Let me open this up, of anything I'm showing here. This is just an example, so I'm not going to read through this, right? And we categorize, right? So you have forgive me, I'm going to move this over so I can see a little bit better. We have headlines, subheadlines, right? The lead, we have body copy, features, benefits breakdown, objection handling, storytelling. We have a close, we have CTAs, images, videos. You get the idea. Everything, testimonials, star ratings, review scores, trust badges, endorsements, guarantees, media mentions. I'll just go user verification, social proof. You can see all of this, and it continues down. Pricing and offers, and this could keep going. But I wanted to give everybody just sort of the major breakdowns, what the description is and what the purpose is. But here's the thing, you'll see how we build on this. What we're actually going to be doing is to look at a page and break down that page. And I'll give you a spreadsheet that you can utilize, but I want you to have an understanding as to what we are looking at when we're looking at this page. And this happens to be Nathan's clients page, right? Well, we have this bar here. Should it be here? Shouldn't it be here? We'll talk about. We have the hero image. We have this as another variable. We have this, which we'll talk about as we go through, is another variable. These two together is another variable. This description is a variable. This below it, we'll talk, is another variable. Pardon me, the CTA. This headline or subheadline, forgive me, is a variable. These images, you get the idea. So I just took the top of fold and I identified, I took this, although it can be broken down, as one variable. Right? We have 15, this is really just a small scroll from the top. I look at 15 different variables on the page that can be broken down that are going to affect this conversion, right? I start from top to bottom, and we won't really go to the specific page. It's fine. So step one is we're identifying the variables, and you can identify their purpose. Pretty easy, not a big deal. Step two, let me give you this.
Can I ask something about step one real quick?
Yeah,
I know
please.
everyone can probably just figure this out themselves or
No,
do
no, no, it's okay,
variations.
please.
But step one, I mean, you're coming through and you're taking probably like a Chrome extension and just taking an image of the page, and then you're going through with another program and just identifying each variable and numbering them. Correct. So
That's all I'm
question.
doing. Yeah,
Well, yeah. Just my question is, what are you using to take a picture of the page, just in case people want to know
okay.
what that is, what you're particularly using, and what are you using to do it? I guess.
That's a good question. Let me open up my Chrome. So give me one sec.
Sure.
I know there's a lot of them, but I want to give you the name of what we find works really well. I believe the one we're using is Nimble, Nimble Capture. It will take full screenshots of the entire page. And that is exactly what we're doing. I mean, there's nothing fancy here. I think that the lesson here, and thank you for, I appreciate it. It's good that you stopped me for a second. The real lesson is step one, is that if we don't know what variables on a page are, then we don't know what to optimize. We also, as you're going to learn, don't know what's not on a page. And I had mentioned, and you'll see this in step two, some of our biggest wins is, does it belong there or doesn't? So we are not only identifying, and you'll see this as I move through these, but what's its purpose? And you'll see me go through this. So like, here, we can say that the purpose is to, let's just say, get people to order over $50. Is that the best use or purpose of it? Do we need that? And we can ask ourselves these questions. But yes, step one, very, very simple. We also have, and many times we'll use, and I'm going to give everybody an Excel sheet, and you can just put these down. Here's the top, in this case, how many do we end up with? I forget. The top 15 variables that we want to do and we want to dive into and we want to look at. The other thing is to understand also, like I said, from a broader picture, is that many times people will come to a page like this. They'll say, well, I know what I need to do. We need a different headline. And that's all they're looking at. And I think what will become clear is everything that works together or doesn't work together, that's not there, is going to affect conversions. But yeah, simple thing. All I did in this particular step is take an image and identify the variables. And then I would add to that, what is its purpose? And I know it sounds obvious, but the reason I'm giving you some of these is because, well, you'll see as we go forward. So step two, right? Here is a list of, forgive me how some of these look like they got a little bit messed up, which is fine. I'll have those fixed. But the idea here is, if we have, and it's better in the Excel, but if we have a list of the most common variables that should be on a page, then we can also use this as a checklist as to what may be missing. Many times, more times than not, there is variables missing from a page that could absolutely increase conversions. There is stuff missing, right? I won't go through all of this there, but there is, and it isn't here, a pre-headline. Many times we go into a page, and I'm just giving one example out of what could be hundreds, and there's no pre-head. You'll see that as an example, I believe, as we go through here. Or there's no subhead that could back up the headline. How do you know that? There's no social proof bars, right, as to where maybe it, not necessarily it's been seen, but social proof that can be done there in multiple different ways. So the idea here is, and I just didn't want to spend a ton of time on there, but as we go through, we have everything from the subheadline to a persona specific headline. We'll dive into that, to strong leads. If we go through here, guarantees, warranty details, right? What kind of videos, what kind of trust badges. Now, I had said at the very beginning, and I mean it, this isn't about checklists, even though I'm giving you a checklist. This is about strategy. This is about thinking through a page intelligently, right? So if we go here and I start to look at this page, and I want to give this as an example, right? There's no phone number at the top. Well, some of this is going to come and some of it's going to build. But when I look at what is the purpose of this and what possibly is missing, I know phone numbers build trust. Whether you ever want or your client wants to answer the phone, side note or not, add a phone number. It's very easy, right? Ring Central. I look here and I say we have a header. We're just talking very general right now. And we say, what is missing? Well, testimonials of social proof. That's an area that could be here. What belongs there? I don't know yet. But I would tell you, in a hierarchical style page, like this, that generally after they see this beginning, we want one or more items of social proof. So this could be a line of 3 testimonials across there. It could be a line of, just social proof, which could be trust symbols based upon the type of companies that are using this particular product. We'll dive into that, but it's missing. We'll talk about this in a moment. This and there are technically there, but I put them there because if you start to analyze a page, you can start to see, is the purpose or use, is it being misused? Like what is, and I don't want to jump, but what should maybe be here that isn't here? So step 1 is identifying all the variables. Step 2 is identifying what is missing. So phone number, testimonials, the mechanism, right? I look here and I had to look up what these were. Of course, I'm not his target market, but I'm like, okay, I always ask the question, and this seems very simple. Why am I here? What can I do here? And why should I do it with you? It should be immediately available. So why am I listing this as something that's not there? I would like to see something that makes this unique and different right away. Some reason why I should continue to read it in this kind of page. So it could be done, and we'll see this as we dive in. We're just at the baby steps right now, but 3 easy steps. What makes it unique? Old way versus new way. What makes this product different than, and forgive me for saying this because I didn't start the research, so Nathan, I don't know, but the first thing popped in, what makes this different than Miracle-Gro? Like, why am I here? Maybe it's a time frame illustrated. The point is, in step number 2, and you will all get the spreadsheets here, the Excel that will give you, we do an evaluation in step 1, what's on the page, step 2, what's not on the page. In many cases, it will become glaringly visible. In other cases, it isn't, but it's okay because you can see missing components that would do. And if you watch that, build trust.
Can I just say that I love this as a systematic approach, because you're right by saying that, at least in every business I've been involved with, people jump on and they say, okay, we're going to test the headline, or we're going to test a lead, or someone just randomly comes up with something to test on the page, but there's no systematic approach to it, like identifying these are the 15 variables, the step 1, step 2, these are the potentially missing variables. But I just like that there is a systematic approach to it, because there usually is none at all. Like there's literally none. Like it's usually people flying by the seat of their pants. I mean, every single case.
And I'll let you know to that. Thank you for that. And I'll let you know that what I said may sound really simple, but some of the biggest swings we've ever had, and we're going to get into purpose in a second in step 3, was, again, I think I called it the great invisibility, right? Actor test. Is it there? Does it belong there? Do we need it there? Going back to my guiding light, it's either increasing conversions or decreasing conversions. A stupid one. Somebody sees trust symbols like, social media symbols because they belong on it's social, and they end up being a whole too. And we'll dive into this particular page. We have seen increases in a page like Nathan's, just by removing entire sections. We don't go by gut, we test. We likewise have seen where something doesn't exist, making it exist, right? If I go back, and I don't want to see if we have a picture of this page. If we go back to the page here, it's like, what is missing? And so sometimes it's not ever about, well, we'll talk about this in another class. You can test your way through to a new design. Somebody asked me about it. It's not about this page not working, just for the biggest thing. It is absolutely not, let's just say, this page doesn't work. Man, it's just not going to work on Facebook. It's just not going to work on X. It very, very, very really is, unless you're unable to appropriately find your ideal customer, right? We're assuming that you're getting qualified clicks on ads. It's very rarely that is the issue. It's very rarely that you need a different page format, the fear of missing out because so-and-so has promoted this kind of a page. It's very rarely about sitting in a meeting and have people, if we did this and we did this and we did that, we have a win. That's worse, by the way, and I mentioned that. That's a cluster test. Now you have 3 different variables going on in the thing. And you literally have no way of knowing. So it is systematic, and I just want to emphasize that step 1, you're identifying everything on the page, and it forces you to look at those variables and what is their purpose. Step 2 is seeing what's missing. And everybody here with their own individual expertise is going to be able to notice, right? There's certain things that make, and we included a lot of them in the checklist, which I'll expand time to time. But the idea here was, if you just use just that checklist, and I don't mean it in the checklist like it's being sold out there. This isn't about put stars here and you got to win. This is about strategy and you thinking about the page in a way to say, we know the purpose of the headline is this, right? What is the next logical step? What is this? Is this accomplishing its purpose? Could something else here be accomplishing its purpose better? And now you're starting to think strategically. So I know I went through them and I appreciate you slowing me down a little bit fairly quickly, but I don't want sometimes what feels like simple to not be powerful. right? We're going to determine through these. So we're making a list there versus not there. Step 3 is understanding the primary goal. We have, right, each of the variables. We want to understand, and again, I don't have to go through all of this, but, we can, if, what is the headlines, what is its actual purpose? Let's just see if I can get there. Maybe in one case it's to educate a user. Maybe it's to highlight a feature and benefit. You can ask yourself why. And then you can ask yourself, okay, if I know it's feature and benefit, how do I make those more powerful? And which feature and benefits am I making? It's a way of analyzing your page. So I'm just going to give this, is it top of funnel? Is this like to push the journey forward? Is this somebody top of funnel that doesn't know much about you there? The point is, I don't want to spend the time with everybody here going through all this individually. The idea is in step 3 is to understand its purpose. And so let's go back and let's look at the purpose that we just spoke about with Nathan's page. And so we can start. Now we'll start to get into this a little bit. And I think it will hopefully, my goal is anyways, to bring this to life. So we have the header bar, right? Purpose. This header, now we could put one word, you can use the purpose. The header highlights a free shipping offer for orders over $50, creating urgency and incentivizing larger purchases for emphasizing savings, right? It's emphasizing savings. That's what it's doing. Do we at this point, these are questions, these aren't answers. Do we care about shipping discounts? If we don't know anything about his page or why we're here, do we? Maybe we do, right? Do we use this to identify why they are here? I put where they are here, forgive me, why they are here, right? Meaning, answering those questions, why am I here? What can I do with you? Like maybe it's some kind of unique benefit we'll start to see. Meaning there's a lot of, we need to understand why that's there in order to be able to test it. Does it do better with and without? I've seen headers and pre-headers like that, just take them out and it will just do better. Other times it's not being used for its right purpose. If we look at, he has a call to action button right at the top, right? We're just talking at the top here. It's the CTA button that says get yours now, right? Again, it's directing them to make a purchase with a clear and actionable text. There's nothing wrong with that. But I start thinking, do I have enough information to buy on that top CTA? That feel a little pushy, right? Should this be action-based, right? Is it about growing plants, right? And results. Should this be action-based? Should this be results-based? These are questions that I'm asking myself. If I go back, and the next thing we're looking at is this section here, the trust. So I start looking at Amazon choice badge and star ratings, right? Builds credibility, high customer ratings, right? I started looking at that. The first thing I saw, did he just create, and I'm picking on him. This is questions, not answers. Did I build credibility or did I just provide a hole to my landing page? What do you think if somebody really wanted this product, they would do? And I'm using this because I've seen this in VSLs. I've seen this in sales pages. I've seen it there. We routinely try. This is a question, by the way, a broader question. What kind of holes am I putting on my page and my funnels and my VSL? This is one example. I want people to start thinking like this. So what I look at that is, yes, Amazon, extremely credible. How many people are we now going to be untrackable that now have just left our page? So because they go to look up Amazon, and do they buy, or have we just distracted them and the next cat video came along, or their husband or wife called them at work, or whatever it may be that stopped them from buying? So this is asking a question, right? It isn't saying I'm not out here. I would never say checklist, never put Amazon on your page. I'm saying let's identify its purpose and look at possible alternative purposes. What about a testimonial could go here, right? These are just thoughts. We're going to build on them, right?
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
real quick, just for context.
Mhm.
This particular page was for a very warm audience who had been consuming content and then retargeting people that had hit one of our 2 main websites with ads. So most of the people were already product aware and just needed a little bit of nudging. But I'm fully appreciating all of your criticisms as well. I just wanted to add that
Oh yeah,
context.
and just so you know, I don't know if you were here. I had thanked you previously and let them know what a great copywriter you were, and that this is also trying to solve a challenge that went beyond what we're talking about here, right? Your ability to, we're not going into that. I was under the impression that this was also a page that you tried to the cold traffic and didn't work. But yes, point taken. Understand. And so, but we want to start understanding what everything is there for, right? And let's just go through it. And regardless who's here. Description, right? The description is the recharge overview. So you have, just to put this here, and I understand warm audience, so let's just see here. We're talking about number 4. So we're talking about this section here. We want to make this, let's say, work on colder or broader traffic. Who am I targeting? Why is this special or different? What is a compost tea, which is referenced in there? Why do I want or need one? If we want this to work right? And there's a certain compliance issue, again, that goes beyond here. The point is, how can we, when we're looking at that, make that stronger? What happens when somebody goes there and I don't understand why I'm here? I don't understand clearly. We'll go into things that haven't, let's say, been warm, because I know that you wanted to make it work on cold traffic, but we want to start answering that in those sections. And I can tell you, this is not about just Nathan's page, and it's not about an e-commerce style page. It's about how do we break these down and think about this. But in e-commerce, look at the kind of descriptions that they put there for the record, since this happens to be there, and they don't address that problem. Or a lead on a standard sales page. They are going to the most aware people and assuming certain words, certain phrases, they are directly and understandable. And or we hear, well, we mentioned that in the ad, and I need to let you know, the disconnect, once they click an ad, it's not a continuation. Almost never. You need to be able to resell why they actually clicked in the first place. So these are just things we're thinking about, right? 5, trust statements, right? Real growers, recharge is the name. Let's take a look here, what we're looking at, just to dive in. Okay, real growers, recharge is the most trusted name in soil microns, right? And so again, whether I know you or don't know you, but we're going to take how can we go about our approach as we go through this, right? And this is not, by the way, picking on his copy or anything. It's just all of us. We're asking questions. That's what I want everybody. I just want to make that clear. I want everybody to be asking questions when they're evaluating pages. So I thought this was a good one to go through, and we'll do the same thing for others. But just my thoughts, right there. Feel self-intelligent. Who cares? What can we utilize that space for better? Regardless, can we use just a quick thing, trust badges and awards, right? Because generally, warm or cold is going to tune out that kind of a statement, right? We talk about recharge product image with branding, which I get, but that type of image typically is used in a store if I'm going to pick it up, meaning I start to look at the image, and again, going under the thought process, how do we target, attract, and convert the widest audience possible? What would be more powerful before and after, right? I mean, he's selling, or his client's selling a growing product. It's a specific for specific growers. That doesn't matter here, but before or after was one thought. We'll dive into this because there's a lot there. With and without, what does it look like when you're using our product versus without our product? Like, I start looking at and breaking down what is the purpose of that image, and that's all we're doing right now, right? We have just, I'll go through this and forgive me. I hope this is worthwhile. So I went through and I looked at these, right? Which appears, and forgive me, understand that everything that I'm doing here is without the benefit of the research, right? But we're looking at those check marks. And let's just go here, forgive me. So it's educating your users, your buyers, your prospects on the key ingredients. Again, nothing means I'm right or I'm wrong. We're learning how to look at a page. So I asked myself, I use old man, old lady, grumpy old man, or old woman on the back. Who cares? Why should I care? Is this your unique mechanism, right? Is this something you have that nobody else has? Even if they've been educated, I'd want to bring them to this page. That is a lot of real estate. And there clearly is a real good reason why I should care. And there are other offers in the marketplace. So this is just how I'm starting to look at these items, right? And then next to the names, we have something very similar, right? It's to emphasize, it's for emphasis. So we see 3 big check marks. And just my initial question, right? We know that's the purpose, right? It's to emphasize. Why not images to attract the eye and curiosity, right? Why not indicate below that image or around that image? These are just about what makes this unique. Maybe it's really difficult to find. Maybe nobody else, I'm making this up, has these 3 ingredients. Maybe each of those ingredients, each of those microbes do something that is not naturally found anyplace else. I want to utilize that area, right? We're talking about the benefits, the visuals. So let's just go to, just so I can go up and we can take a look at this. We're almost done. So we're going to look at number 9 and number 10, and number 9 to those images. And I know that we spoke like that for the record, like Nathan would like to be able to use different images that can't be used, right? Because I think it's okay to say, like, I believe that his primary market is, I want to say hemp growers, right? So there's some restrictive scenario there. My thing would be, this doesn't matter, right? We want this to work to culture. We'll talk, and I have some ideas as to what he can do there and be compliant. Whole completely different subject. But how can we make these images stronger? Because as I look, as somebody who does not have the benefit of the research, I look at it like, what makes this different? Like, it feels like, and point taken, Nathan, but it feels like I'm looking at, and you need to understand they're like a Miracle Grow page, right? And so instantly, I want to know, we talk about different, not better. I really want that in my face, and we're not even, we're just slightly below the fold. So these are just questions, right? We can do this with literally every page, but how can we make this stronger is the question, right? How can we connect? Can we do before and after? You absolutely, if you have those available to you, this you won't be restricted from just a side note compliance on this kind of thing. With and without, again, comes up. Comparison to off-the-shelf products or other products may be much more valuable here. And then there is the copy section where it starts with the copy, the secrets of strongest soils out. And, my only question, and the answer may be absolutely yes, right? It's just Nathan here is like, but what came in mind as I'm analyzing the page is this really what I really want? Do I want stronger soil? Now, Nathan may say, and it's all testable, that that is exactly what people want, and his market understands they need stronger soil, right? But is there an outcome that I'd rather want that would lead me in? And so I didn't mean to spend too much time on this as we go through, but I want you to be able to see that as we go through and we've broken down the page strategically, what's on the page, what's not on the page, we can then ask ourselves and see and identify what's the primary goal of each of those items. And I think, at least from my experience, I don't see many people actually doing this. Like we talked about before, they're going to test the headline. But everything that you see on a page is either moving it forward or not. And I would say, because we've done the same thing with JV traffic and other warm traffic, everything here, and if it's on mobile, it's going to be pushed down even further, is either pushing them towards a conversion or away from conversion, is either saying, I need this right now, or I don't. And even more importantly, if we want to go and we want to be able to make this work on Facebook, we can make this page powerful, even if we have to be very careful about who we're specifically talking to, right? We can use words and language that don't have to be about a pot plant. I mean, they just don't have to be about that, but are going to get them that result that they want. So the purpose of this step was just to have everybody have an understanding as to how and why we break that down. Now, I'm going to go on, but I want to make sure, does anybody have any questions regarding that? Or Jason, do you have any thoughts about what we're doing so far?
I just love that I have a systematic approach that I can use now to test something up, because it's, you have whole marketing teams sitting around on Zoom, just people going with their gut saying we should test this or that, or we should try this badge or try that badge. But I love that you have a systematic approach in general, where you identify the variables, you identify missing variables, you identify the purpose of each variable, and I see where it's going. Like, you're identifying the purpose, so you can come up with alternative ways through semantic separation to test various variables. One question I have is on every page for step one, do you typically break down every single variable, or is it just you limit yourself to 15 or so on every
That's
page?
a really good question. We prioritize, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next class, but we have a front to back and top down approach. And what I mean by that is we go under and there's exceptions to this, by the way, because let me try to explain this in just a couple of a minute or so, and then we'll dive in and see this. So what I mean by that is, when we talked about the ripple effect, we all know we talked about why is it worth us? We don't jump around typically with pages. There are exceptions. There are reasons why you want to go and start at upsell one, but usually that's not the case. So usually we're starting at whatever this page is over here. We're also starting top down, because typically if we can't get them from here to here, then that's going to have usually the biggest impact. There's also an exception to that, because many times we find that they're let's say hiding the lead, right? And the best part is down below, or they have those testimonials and social proof way down here. So we are testing, moving it from here to here, or so there are reasons. And we also have to remember, before I answer your question very specifically, that people do not, if you're watching heat maps and scroll maps and recordings, we have them Visio, you don't have to spend a long time doing it, but you'll realize whether it's an e-commerce page like this, or it's a sales letter, whatever it is, people tend to look at the offer, right, and scroll many times, not all the way down to the bottom, and then unsell themselves on the way up. I think it may have been Dan Kennedy was the first I heard say that, that then the rest of the page tries to unsell them. I can be wrong on that. Feel free to be corrected. So yes, I would normally do something similar that we did here, especially when we see a lot of room to go. So in this case, we have 10 to 12 different variables. Sometimes it's less. We know we can go further down, but I just like, think we can make so much impact based upon us doing what we just did. There's never a reason, and I think this is where you may be going, for us to take, and a page has 100 different variables, to outline 100 different variables. The idea is more to understand the framework and where you're going. And so I understand if you're going from the top down, you can start there and go above the fold and usually a little ways down and make some huge impact. But we will continue this process. We will absolutely continue through the page. We may absolutely, after doing 1 or 2 or 3 top of fold style tests and the areas are go down because there's something down below by the call to action, et cetera, that we'll do. We normally take it top down, but you're right. It's for purposes of the question, there's no need. I want you to understand the framework, but there's no need to write down and go through or have an assistant write down 100 different variables. The idea more or less is just to follow the process to see that if we take, and in Nathan's case, in this particular page, we're here, right? We haven't really got very far, and we see just like how much potential is there. And if any of us were to make the assumption that we know or why, and I don't care if this was warm traffic or we're trying to make it work to cold, we can definitely see some significant increases in conversions. Now, I know that's a bold statement, and I don't say I know the best combination there. I just, from testing so much and seeing so much, I can see that. But to your answer specifically, no, you don't have to sit there and belabor and go through 100 different. You just want to understand and have a process and a reason. I think it's more, you want to have a strategy for why you're doing what you're doing, rather than, that I know, and this could use 5 stars, and so we're going to go down. We just want to follow the process, but that's a really, really good question.
Well, I'm also starting to see how any page can be improved. I don't care who wrote it. I don't care if Clayton Makepeace wrote it or something like that, or John Benson or whoever, or how well it's converting with all these different variables. There's got to be a way to increase it. Like I'm just starting to see that based on what you're doing. And you're talking about semantic separation, which you're going to get radically different results with radically different messaging. So I get that too.
Yeah, and you can apply it, by the way, to sales letters. You can apply it to VSLs. You can apply it to pieces. But I'll ask another backup question to your example of Clayton Makepeace or your example of John Benson or whoever it may be, or yourself. Is that, okay, you write phenomenal copy. Everything else that's in and around that copy is going to affect that conversion, right? Like we're not living anymore in a vacuum. And even though the idea or concept behind, at least this is my opinion from what I've seen, like the ugly, used to be the ugly VSL, not, by the way, it works in certain markets. I've seen you crush it with what we'll call primarily to get out to market, but people are becoming more sophisticated, right? So there's usually more on a page. And I've seen it, there's all these hard and fast rules. Well, don't put anything but the VSL. Well, I've seen stuff in and around the VSL pump up that conversion, that play rate, and make the difference between it working or not working. So having a structure, I guess the other side of that is to understand that, yes, everything absolutely can be improved. I don't know personally, but I know John, but I'm just saying like Clayton, but I think most really, really great copywriters would probably agree that I'm providing a V1 because they grew up, unless they have a huge ego, which some do, with the idea or understanding that all their work should be tested, even if they didn't know how much it should be tested. I mean, I go back to the classics and the greats that we all stand on their shoulders and everybody tested and understands the importance of research and testing. But yeah, I am a believer of that everything, just about everything can be improved. And we're not talking by micro steps. We're not talking, oh, we got a 1% or 2%. I think that we, clearly you have an expert like a Clayton Makepeace. He's going to hit the ball more times than not. But how much is he still leaving on, the table? Because ultimately, decisions. He's making intelligent decisions and experienced decisions, but ultimately he's making decisions that can only really be answered in the marketplace.
And the greatest copywriter of all time, in my opinion, is Eugene Schwartz, and he had an 80% hit rate. So it means 80% of the ads he wrote paid out, but that still leaves 20% improvement on the greatest copywriter of all time. So just imagine some other copywriters out there, like who's the guy who did the blue blocker sunglasses?
Joe Sugarman.
Sugarman. Yeah, he said that if he hit, if he had a 10% hit rate, he was gonna make a fortune. So what does that tell you?
And also, there's another side to that. I think that's becoming more and more relevant in today's marketplace. I think having a win is not good enough. And what I mean by that, here's the way a lot of players are playing in the market is like, I have a win, push the gas. But just because, so let's just define this a little bit, because I do think it's important, right? Some don't have a win, right? They're losing some money on their offer. Some are at break even, and some will define a win rate as making more money than they're spending. It's profitable, right? The question is, even on those most profitable campaigns, I think a big issue and a big mistake is that they just turn on the gas without understanding how much more profitable it could be. If you have somebody that has, like you say, a hit rate, that's awesome. But I don't think it's enough to have a hit rate. And here's why. eventually an offer peters or dies, even for the greatest. Some of them last, but in today's market, there's so much of it. And I think that you are either moving forward always, or you're falling behind. And I think that that is why the mentality is wrong when people are going to companies that we've all dealt with in the neutral space and the financial space to say, we have a win. That's great. Definitely step on the gas, but utilize that to reiterate and find out how much better you can make that, how much further ahead you can make it, because we all know he can afford to spend most wins, right? It's just, I think my point is that it's not enough just to have a win.
Well, I will say the companies I've been working with have had an all or nothing kind of view about this too. So if they have an offer or something that's doing okay, or it's almost working but it doesn't, and they're still bleeding money a little bit, they'll literally just throw it away and throw something new up. Completely
It's
opposite of what you're talking about here. They won't test it up. They may try a couple headlines or something like that, but literally they'll trash it before they do anything you're talking about.
And what's interesting is if we take outside of our, let's say, bubble, and I think the example I provided in the previous class with the Gunther Rinker and the Beauty by Cindy Crawford. And I love that, so I'll repeat a little bit of it because arguably, I think an argument can be made they have the best copywriters in the world for their particular was niche or media, right? They have some of the best. They have the most. They have money and resources, and they have experience. And so the answer to what you just said is, yet they lost money for one full year. And on the other side of that, and we're not recommending anybody or any of our clients lose money, we're just putting this in perspective. On the other side of that, it became the highest performing infomercial of all times and $1 billion with a B dollar company in sales. And so I think that puts it in perspective that we have to take ourselves outside of the box. And the other side of that, one last thing that pops up in my mind that I'm thinking about as we're having this conversation is that, and we know, and I know companies as well that do that and sort of leave really, really good offers on the copywriting room floor, so to speak, right? Is that they're sort of doing it by brute force. And I'm not saying anything is dying ever. This isn't the death of this or the death of that, but we are definitely getting into a much, much more sophisticated market. There's no doubt. There are very few, I'm sure people there, let's say unsophisticated or unaware markets, like truly unaware markets, right? And people that aren't more sophisticated. And so I think that as costs go up, innovation has to also go up. And I think the days of that they'll continue to happen indefinitely are going to end. And I think that's probably, I can't speak for them, why a company like Gunther Rinker is willing to invest when they see sort of that smoke or close to. As I like to say, if you have an offer that's doing it, and you can even expand this, 75% ROAS, you have a winner. I mean, you have a huge winner. This is like the whole thing. If you have we've done it, people that started out at literally 50%, meaning but if you get anybody that's even in the ballpark and they're hitting it out of the park, 60% ROAS out of the, let's just say out of the black, I can absolutely, I shouldn't use those words, those definitive words, because I don't know, I'm sure there may be markets or offers, but within range, that means you are a few tests away from getting to break even and a few more tests to going to profitable and scale. And if you throw that away or do what they do and just like, let's say, do a rewrite, you are missing the boat. Yeah. So I will just go here. We'll bring this up. I think this will help bring this forward. So step 4 is just to repeat, right? We identify what variables we have what variables are missing. We understand their purpose. And now we can start applying semantic separation to these. And I'm gonna go through, I'll give you a copy of this, but I'd rather see this applied to what we just talked about. Again, none of this is actual copy. None of it is actual. Should this be what we're going to apply to it? I'm going without the benefit of research and other things that we would do for the market, but it will illustrate, right? So we talked about the banner, and I just want you to see what this looks like applied, right? Currently, the control orders over $60 to lower 48 states, fast and free. I think that's what it said. I'll pull it up. It doesn't matter. Scarcity. So let's start applying different triggers. I want to bring back before I start this, right? We understand the reason why and the purpose, right? We went through some of this in our research. We have different triggers. I want to bring this back in mind just to the last class and the one before. We have triggers, right? Psychological triggers. We have different emotions and emotional triggers. We have value propositions. We have different pains. We have the dimensionalization of the pains, right? We talked about I will fill this all into categories. So we've now gone through these steps, right? This is step 4 or 5 of 5. How can we apply them? And it doesn't only have to be one. You can mix and match. So here's just a couple of quick, right? Scarcity and urgency, limited time, free next day delivery. And by the way, this is not what he's offering, not talked about to his client. Some of it may not be. It's all for illustration, right? Limited time, free next day delivery plus bonus growth guide $47 value, right? It's an immediate fear of missing out, right? A little value stack. One way that may be able to be used. Pain point plus solution. Stop killing your plants. Again, I'm doing my caveat. I don't know if this market actually has this problem. It could just be not getting as big enough yield as it should, but you'll start to see how these can be applied. Pain point, stop killing your plants. Free expert growth consultation with orders over $100, right? These are just idea generators, right? It addresses their fear of plant failure, right? You could do this, by the way, different note. You could do this by messenger, the consultation by messenger or chat, and upsell and build clients and the whole bit. Authority and social proof. Professional growers, member pricing plus free priority shipping, right? Be part of an exclusive group. Heaven scenario, we're just randomly picking. We could start to think about the research documents that we did. Now, you all have, I know the question is like, well, what do I test? And I could go on infinitely. We all have our own background and experience, but even if you didn't, you can start to see, and we'll give you another tool, how you could start to apply this to the research and the categories that we already have. Heaven scenario, garden transformation kit, free express delivery and setup, right? We're just attaching. It's the pain point, but it's a desire. The mechanism, I don't know that this exists. I made this up. Proven results, 93% success rate plus free overnight delivery, right? That's just item one. Product title, recharge natural plant growth stimulant. His market may know. I'm not really sure what it is, and if I should even at that point have my name in the actual title. Pain point, this is just illustration. Pain point solution, professional grade soil revival system, dead plants to thrive in garden, right? You can apply this to an e-commerce site, right? You can apply this to anything, but how do you take a e-commerce where very little copy is actually done? And for the copywriters here on the call, and even the media buyers, if you really want easy wins, there's I'm not talking about Nathan's page here, but very little have copywriters actually working on their pages or good copywriters. But you start to see, right? Can't speak. Mechanism and authority. Advanced microbial root enhancement formula as used by pro growers, right? Some of these are getting more of an emotional reply in just the title. Let's just look here. Benefits, rapid plant growth accelerator results in 48 hours or less. Now I saw something on the page, it doesn't matter. They can test things that they can back up and that they do, but it focuses on the speed. Heaven scenario, again, ultimate garden success system. Never worry about plant health again. Or if in his case, again, if it's about growth in yield, we could talk without at all talking about any kind of trigger words that maybe somebody would have a problem with. We could make this. I just didn't know at the time of writing this what that ultimate desire is or desires and what those desires look like. But just talking about the fact that it's growers, my guess would be that one of the things that they want is a certain yield, right? And so if the average, whatever you call it, so I don't think he uses the word crop, but whatever the thing is, you could talk about that heaven scenario in the same way in a small little e-commerce title. Problem and unique solution. Struggling plants, pro-grade microbial rescue formula, right? So you start to see as we break down each of these variables, and we're still here. We haven't left the hero section, right? We talk about the social proof section. Current is 4.8 out of 5, right? So we can start to, and then below it was, I think, 3,000 for global ratings. And I like that, and that's fine. A couple of just my initial thought is that I don't know, we talked about the Amazon. I don't know if I like the wording global ratings. That's something I would just test just because it doesn't roll off the head. But let's just look at how can we use semantic separation to get outside of our own heads, look at just this one little tiny nothing section, right? I don't mean that nothing in a wrong way, and see what else. Used by 50,000 plus professional growers, 96% report stronger plants. Now, you'll have to figure out what you have there, but that may not do as well as Amazon, but that would be something that you get social proof and results tied in. Before and after. Average yield increase, again, this is made up 312%, documented in blank number of case studies, right? We could do other things that leads to their benefit, right? Concrete improvement data. By the way, as a side note on this, if you don't, Nathan, have that, I would try to get as much concrete data that you could get or utilize. I think it's powerful in this particular case. Expert validation. If you have or can get validation by university studies certified by a particular lab, right? We could just add that certified by agricultural labs, proven in university studies. This could be another variation where we have the trust symbols from the industry certifications there, right? Building credibility. We could have industry recognition. Working with a client now, by the way, and they sell a very, very high-end product. They get people on call, it doesn't there, but their entire above the fold is all based upon social proof. for whatever it's worth. Not saying that's the only trigger, but for whatever it's worth, it can make big swings. So industry recognition, maybe they were best garden innovation used by top 10 commercial farmers. We can adapt to these, even if you don't have an award or a winner, used by, right? Used by the largest XYZ. It's just about getting outside your own head and looking at how one little bit will go user success. You can have just general social proof. And this I can tell you from testing, depending on how, make it join 10,000 plus success stories. We've talked about this, Jason, in different contexts, the power of community, right? And by the way, this isn't when I'm putting it out, I'm not talking about like one specific trigger or not trigger, but community can be huge. Nobody wants to be alone, right? Whatever it is, if this was an odd number and you had 15,210, probably work even better, right? And then you can have my plants doubled in size, right? You can have a small testimonial there. So as I'm going through this, I just want this to be clear that we are only at the very top of the page in the hero section, right? And then if you recall, we have, and I'll pick up the pace a little bit, forgive me, a hero image. So I have seen in VSLs, in TSLs, so across the board, in e-commerce sites, images get thrown in as afterthoughts. I will tell you that visual is, well, it's old cliche, an image is worth, whatever it was, forgive me, I can't remember now. What is it? How many words? Whatever it is, I can't remember, but it does, right? It's going to support the emotion behind your copy. And usually they're thrown in. So just start thinking of this, like hero image. Could be a before and after split screen. The left, a stunted yellow, right? Sad looking plant. In the right, the same species 30 days later. Right? And you label it. It's a before, it's an after. And as a side note to Nathan, I would make a point that even if this was not to a picture of the ideal plant you're looking to show, that kind of differences in image with the sort of non-wink of certain terminology that they use would also help get you closer to what they're there, right? But we can, in an image, demonstrate transformation. We can create emotional connection with the pain, right? We can show a timeline. We can maintain the product visibility so we can keep a picture of if you want that product, but we can actually make these better. Professional results scene. Again, I don't know, but maybe we want this associated with, we're getting semantic separation, right? Maybe we want this image associated with professional growers, right? In other words, maybe the whole thing is that your ideal customer, and so maybe we're showing a greenhouse with rows and stark contrast, even if we can't show the exact plant, right? We can show a treated row versus a non-treated row. I won't get there, right? There could be multiple growth panel, I think would be cool. These are just ideas, right? I mean, day 1, day 7, day 14, day 30, right? Instantly, I can tell you completely different scenario. These kind of images get real results. So you have an ability, even if it's not at all the same breed of plant, right? Expectation, speed of results. We get the idea there. Environmental action shot. This goes back to sort of like my man, my woman, the problem, the solution. Well, without even, let's say, potentially showing a picture of the plant, maybe we show a picture of who your customers are, right? Maybe we do an image of like we're saying here, the soil and the roots, right? Maybe we show the split screen and you're able to think a little bit outside the box and identify with who your users are. And we haven't discussed this, so I don't know. In other words, I don't know if it's like a home-based people with a small business or it's large or it's both. But the goal here is just to start to see, applying this methodology, how we're still in that hero, how we can do. We have a results gallery, right? And then we talked about this, right, as a bonus with the ideal prospect, a man versus a woman, again, showing in their perfect environment. And then we're going to continue, right? We're still continuing on this, so I'll try to pick up the pace and go quick. But hopefully you start to see through this particular page, not who he's targeting, but how this framework and structure and tools, and I'm going to give you one more block before we end, but I just want to show you how this semantic separation can be applied and how we're looking at, I don't mean simple in that not well done, but simple page with talking about certain variables and how we can start evoking different emotions to what we're doing. And you can again apply this. So let's just go through it, right? I didn't write complete product descriptions, but let's just go, right? Pain point. Tired of yellow stunted plants, our proprietary microbe blend unlocks trapped nutrients in your soil, delivering 300% more nutrients directly to your roots in 48 hours. Now, I don't say any of that's real, but at least if I came here and I want to know why I'm here and I scanned the top of that description, you have to adapt to what? I know why I'm here. And I may want to learn more or hit the buy button. Authority, right? I don't know. This is again developed by PhD soil scientists, right? Maybe it was developed by a certain scientist, whatever it may be. This advanced microbial formula transforms lifeless dirt into rich living soil that professional growers pay thousands for. Now that's making an assumption that there's a certain breed that you can't get this anyplace else without spending a ton of money, but you get the idea. Fear. Warning: 89% of garden soil is nutrient locked. I don't even know if that's a real word, but slowly starving your plants. Recharge living microbes unlock these nutrients instantly. I don't know that's what they do, but you get an idea as to how it can be used. Clinically proven to increase nutrient intake by 312% in 24 hours, right? Used by award-winning gardeners to achieve record-yielding results. We're focusing on data-driven. Nature's hidden secret: billions of beneficial microbes work 24/7 to feed your plants each day. Without them, it cost you precious growing time. So we're just trying to get an idea as to, in a hero section, this, by the way, we've done this exact same formula, exact to a pre-sale page or an editorial without rewriting the editorial. We broke it down. I can show that the exact same way. You can break down subheads, headlines, and images the exact same way. It can be applied to just about every page. So there is a trust statement that we talked about. Real growers recharge the most trusted name in soil microbes. Proof plus authority, right? These are all make-believe, but you get an idea. It's going to depend on what assets you have available to you. But we could have, I'd rather see 3 little check marks, verified by independent labs, trust used by 8 out of 10 top commercial farms, winner 2024 Agricultural Innovation Award. Well, I can tell you that even if I was warm traffic, these kind of backup proof when my brain is trying to make a decision are going to possibly push me over the edge, right? So results plus social proof. Join 50,000 plus successful growers who achieved X, Y, and Z. 2 to 3 times larger harvest, 40-hour growth response, 95% success rate. Risk reversal, we can put it right up top. See results in 48 hours, 90-day money-back promise, free expert support. In other words, you can make people feel comfortable. All of these are going to get different results, and it's from a single line that's taking up some space on a page. Endorsed by, I won't go through, but you can get the idea. Problem solution, the missing link in 92% of, I'm sorry, let's see, 90% of failed gardens, right? So I won't go through, but I think that the general lesson here is something that I talked about before, and I'm trying to push ahead, but that every single word matters. If I give you the example that I gave before, the accidental 2-word, then you shouldn't assume that these words don't matter. And for bonus points, when you start combining these and you start testing multiple of these variables together, then you will sometimes find that headline 3 works best with social proof 2 and CTA 4, meaning you start to figure out that page recipe, which is for another time. I wanted there. Do I have a little bit of time to continue? Or if not, Jason, I can pick this up at the last. If people are with me and if this is helpful,
Yeah.
I will keep
Yeah,
going.
please continue.
I like it. I'll tell you, I know that we kind of run over a lot, but I know with Scott, you're going to get the most detailed explanation of anything, which I love about the way you teach, to be honest. And then also I can see so far how this process, I can see how your firm goes through this process A to Z. Like I'm starting to see it, how you're selling them basically by giving them projections of what they're going to be seeing or possibly seeing. Going into research, I can see that process since you went over the whole process. I feel like I can implement it. I feel like I could teach my own agency. If I had a CRO agency, I feel like I could teach them how to do that. And now I'm starting to see the process of you going through these 5 steps. And I feel like it's a replicatable process. And I don't know anyone who has um, anything this strategic or systematic that you have for CRO. I mean, I've never seen it in 20 years. So I'm excited to continue it.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
so however
Thanks.
long you want to go.
Thank you for that. So I just want to break down, and my hope is not to point out, and I know I keep saying this, but I just want to emphasize, it's not about like one technique, or of course you see something, feel free to use it and make it testable in your own stuff. But I want to make clear it's not about that, right? We can do the same thing. And if we tie this to the research, and it's not, by the way, about being overwhelmed. I mentioned last time, be overwhelmed with the possibilities. We'll go down and we'll actually like create tests, right? Which is a combination of, we'll say, science and art. But I hope what you're actually seeing is that if you have all these possibilities and we're making semantic separation, which is differences, right, that are going to move the needle, that are going to hit different emotions in different ways, that if you see this, that you can't almost make a mistake. Number one, you're not going to run out of stuff to test to continue to iterate and improve. Number two, you're going to start to see that, well, at least this is the way I look at it. I may really know this market or think I know this market, but how much do I really know? Like, what is actually going to produce the best results? And so you don't have to be overwhelmed. You have to be, it's pretty easy when you start looking at different pages through these kind of lenses, you start to see, wow, what can test? Now you apply, like I said before, your experience and your intuition on top of this. That's how you apply it. Like you get, like looking at copywriters or even people that see things in the media buying world, that's how you mesh what we're doing, but do so in a framework. So I'll continue to go through just so you see possibilities. So the CTA button, get yours now, right? We could add an urgency stack right there. Claim your growth kit plus bonuses. That could be the CTA, right? Perceived value, we could add right at the top. Start transforming your garden. It's a whole different, I heard it said that when you get to a CTA, that's like becomes the friction point. right? You create a slippery slope. How do you keep that sort of slippery slope going? Well, we don't know what's going to appeal. I'll tell you that I've seen next steps outperform an action-based. We don't know, right? And that's not a universal truth. So results-based, start transforming your garden. I can guarantee you that if we go through this in the research, there's probably a dozen different results-based, right? Risk reversal, try risk-free to 90 days. Social proof, join plus action, 50,000 plus successful growers. I won't go into all the reasoning why, because I think everybody's starting to get an idea with that. Activate your 48-hour growth boost. So this is just on the CTA, and I'm going to keep making mention that we're still in the top of fold, right? The microbe title section, recharge soil microbes. And I'm not picking on anything, I'm just saying opening up. So we start to look at this. I don't know what that means. His market may, but we're always, I believe, goal is to open that up. Like you want to be not, yes, this, you don't want so that you want as wide or as unproduct aware as you can be in every one of your products, and you'll convert more. You'll carry along the product aware people with you. So okay, so in case instead of recharge soil microbes, just again, your soil's missing growth multipliers. Just made up again. Your soil's missing 3 critical growth multipliers. There's a little bit of curiosity there, at least there. What am I missing? Is your soil missing these 3 critical growth multipliers? All similar, based the same. I just wrote them out differently. Results based. These the three microbes, excuse me, behind 300% bigger yields, or whatever that yield is. That's going to draw me in a little bit. You're putting up the page. You want people to keep reading as to why, right? So it's a specific outcome. Secret revelation, nature's hidden growth accelerators. Well, I don't know. I'm not necessarily the market, but you start to get the idea how we can start to create curiosity and discovery, things that we most on the call know and understand that these are triggers. And many have written copy. And if you haven't written copy for an entire page, you've written copy in ads. This is how we can start applying it. Authority, right? Professional grower's secret weapon. And forgive me for using the word secret weapon and have it be cliche, but you get the idea. Education, understanding your soil's living engine. The main point here, as I'm looking at this, is that we may all have an idea as to, that's going to be the one to pull. But in a page, we don't know what's going through our prospect's mind. An educational type headline, subhead in this case, may pull in more people because they want to be educated and they want to read. That may be their motivation. The key point here is, as I go up, each one of these is hitting a different emotional button, a different trigger. And that's the key, right? To start thinking like that. The icons and check marks, there were simple green check marks you all recall on the page, right? We could add along those images different visual proof, right? Scientifically verified. Maybe there's different lab certifications that you could put under each one of those 3. We're talking about utilizing space on a page, right? We're talking about, we have big check marks for emphasis. What could we use there? We could do, again, I'll continue down, forgive me. We could do result-based icons. We create icons all the time when we're testing. So think, what are the 3 biggest results that your ideal prospect wants? Growth boost, unlock the soil, whatever it is. And you can very easily have 3 of your own specific icons that are specific to you. I would venture a guess for each of those microbes. If I can learn how to say it, would be a good thing. But for each of those, your own unique certificate icon for each of those that's going to draw the eye to the benefits. Because for me, you just want to build on benefits and build on benefits and build on benefits. And I know I've spoken with you, Jason, a lot about this and the idea of Eugene Schwartz and intensification, but it doesn't have to be displayed in one single way. Like Eugene Schwartz is brilliant. I've mentioned this to Jason loves him, which is probably one of the reasons we get along so well among others. But he talks and he's an expert at building, like in your letters and your videos, building intensification. But I just wanted to say, like, this can be applied in all different ways. Like, we're thinking about this. How, as somebody is scanning this page, do we just keep building the desire? What is that piece that's going, I think you call it, so I want to get credit, like that breaking point. And maybe they're thinking about, even if they know you, 2 or 3 different solutions, or they're unaware, and they see a certain, does that, a certain certificate or does that, or some sort of social proof. This is all, I think, another way to look at this is, at least in this section of this page, as you're going through, are we missing just a different lens to look at when we're looking at the purpose? Are we missing an opportunity to intensify, taking and stealing from Eugene Schwartz? What should be there, right? We have our research. What are they worried about? How are we different? And we don't even necessarily have to outright mention anybody. We can be talking about our unique mechanism. We can be, in this case, talking about the growth. I don't know that this is their ultimate desire, but And I just thought of this, just whatever, because you could do sort of non-image type of, like where you can't get away. But if I saw icons, that's about 300% growth. And then the question is, do I just put an icon or do I actually also identify that icon? But this is an idea in one area. We talked about expert endorsements. This can be used here. Research institution logos. I'm not saying you have them, but just like we know in Nutra and in space and other spaces, people, you can borrow authority. Maybe throwing this out there, it's not even your particular product. Maybe it's research logos that are reinforcing the actual microbes that you are saying that belong inside this, that are in your product, right? And then you could have the same thing, grower tested, reviews and star counts. The major point here is we can come up with a bunch of different, and I'd say better, but different and better things that will catch the eye, that will draw you back down, that if I'm scanning on this page, it's which combination, and it can even be combinations of these things, that is going to tell me, why should I care about these 3 microbes? Why? Like, is there a reason? And even if your internal market knows that, I would recommend visually and otherwise, when people are being forced to make a decision, to re-explain it to them and re-remind them, because your brain is a funny thing. It tends to phase out a lot of things and get busy. So I would actually say, even if you think they all know what these 3 microbes are, you want to make them more attractive and re-remind them as to why they should. Because if all it took was a warm market, then there would be no reason to put anything but the buy button at the top, right? Presumably, they're still reviewing and they're still buying. Plus, I want to take a look at this as a standpoint of, how do we bring in the maximum number of buyers, right? And then we can do, again, guarantee based, right? So as a bonus, I just made a note, real images we talked about. Now, I know that you can't, or worried we'll talk about that, put certain images, but I think you can apply and can do with things like roots and everything, real images plus the icons. And again, you can mix and match icons. So if we continue down, because I want everybody to see and get, but we're looking at and we're following, we're almost done with his, with the items that we identified. And I hope everybody's starting to see these possibilities. So we have the benefit images. So I spoke about those, right? We have the 3 images that are showing plants, if you recall, 3 different plants. So this is going to be a little bit familiar because I think there's just some certain things that you could do regarding images, but you can test it beyond. Before and after with progression shots and timestamps, right? 48 hours, 7 days, 30 days. I didn't believe I've seen that, right? To show and illustrate rather than just what appeared to me 3, there may be a reason, 3 random images of plants that just look like they're doing really good, right? That's the idea. We can trigger a lot there. We could do problem solution with more of the split screen, right? 3 different split screens. We can put in, again, we talk about case studies. You could use things like to label it and label it 302%, 312% yield increase, right? 284 faster growth, 197% bigger roots with the name of the nursery, meaning we can label it, take an image that may or may not be working and add to it. So just a couple of things. So success journeys, we talked about some of this, and anything you want or anybody wants, I'll be more than happy to give you. But the value stack demonstration, right, which could be showing in this area, what does it get? Maybe we turn this from a product to some product with bonus, right? I made this up, right? The stronger root system, enhanced nutrient uptake, natural pest resistance, right? You give a value. Point being, when we look at this and we look at a few pictures, how do we decide? How do we move the sales process forward? How do we increase that desire? And so now we come down to the very last, this was the secret section, right? The headline says the secret to stronger soil is out. So again, some of these may be over the top, but it's okay, right? You can see the headlines, exclusivity plus revelation, exposed elite growers, $1,000 soil secret. Now, at least on my system, I got there and I just saw, the secret to stronger soil is out. So how can we make that more powerful? If we are assuming, and I am assuming now, that the purpose is now to draw them down, to get them now to read even more about what makes this different, we have a lot that we could potentially trigger there, right? We could, this is, of course, forgive the cliche, but when big agriculture doesn't want you to know about this. Now, I'm not saying you do that, but in the individual growers market, I bet that there are certain things where they feel like, and I could be wrong here, a little bit on the outside, that other people don't want them to succeed. And so maybe there's another way that you could test that, right? This could be about a scientific breakthrough. This could be, this information won't be public long. That's a little bit over the top. Results-based, the truth, why some gardens grow 3 times faster, why some growers have 2x the yield, right? What is it that's bringing them through? And again, this isn't about a specific headline. This isn't about me being right or anything to do with that. I want this to be about like a framework and a structure so that you don't have to look at it and say, what do I test? And you know what? Let's test this, this, and this. And you can start to see that when we combine, I've only used a handful of triggers, all the research triggers, the research data that we have, Okay. I'll throw this out as an example. When we have any one product and we have up to sometimes 10 different value propositions, reasons why you believe in the research that people are actually engaging with your brand. That's just the beginning. Which of those value propositions are you actually demonstrating? Through the images, through the captions for the images that don't really exist there, through the calls to action, through the headlines and testimonials that don't exist there, or certificates, right? And so when we look at things like value propositions, when we look at things like emotions, when we look at things like features, benefits of benefits, dimensionalization, we end up with this big puzzle. And it doesn't mean you have to figure out that big puzzle from the beginning. It means that you are all given with a control. And now let's do this intelligently to be able to structure your tests for the word Kaizen, continual improvement. And many times you'll see much more than a little improvement. And bringing this all full circle, your offers or your client's offers, whether you're running traffic or whatever position you're in, are going to benefit by 5%, 10% differences in sales. Here's the thing. When you start combining this stuff, you will get breakthroughs that they never had that are 30% and 40% and higher on a single offer from everything that is surrounding. We have a client, an agency. I mentioned this before, so forgive me that it popped in the head, but I just want this kind of nothing example to show you. They tested, I think I probably brought it up before, so forgive me. It's just like the extreme AI-based logos. And I'm like, really? Like, you don't even, like, we'll test a logo there or a logo not there. We'll test the size of the logo because it's not about, most companies want their stuff front and center and all that kind of stuff. But AI logos that got them over a 20% increase in actual sales. And they were butt ugly. I do that not because I want any of you to do that, right? I'm not at all recommending that anybody on this call, on this video, do this. I just do it to open your eyes to say that everything that is and around both the copy, the messaging there matters. And I think it's a big mistake for people to assume, we know what the saying about assume, that things aren't going to matter. And if we also take a look at it and you get a 5% and then a 10% and a 50%, let's forget about the 30, 40, 50% and higher that I show you. That is moving them towards the ability to scale. And if we also are paying attention to how this affects, which we all will from now on, their AOV, average order value, and ours per click. Now you're giving them, somebody that may have had trouble scaling, the ability to scale. Or you're giving somebody that is good and, oh, this time of year, I can't make any money. Well, is it this time of year? Yeah, I'm sure. But if you're converting better, it really is this. There's one simple solution I hate to there. For anybody who's not making money online or not making as much money, convert more. That's what we're all in the business of, right? I mean, everything, I don't care who's here on for traffic, that, and how many, we'll call it secrets, I'll use that word again, or how much, knowledge you have. There is nothing that's going to move the needle further than if an offer actually converts and if you can make it convert better. So that's what this is about. And since I've taken up a lot of time, I just want to show you, and you will get posted. And this is another thank you to Jason. And I'm going to preface this. This is cool. The bot next class is something I use them all the time, that you're going to, I believe you're going to be blown away by. But let's just pick on, pull up the URL so I get it right.
Standpoint, when
Just to grab. Did I mess up? I did. Sorry. There we go. So like all the bots so far, I believe all the bots, all you have to do is drop a URL or drop whatever you want. And it is going to go through the page and it's going to go through all the different ideas, right? You can attach with this your research document, but you can see how it's creating that semantic separation for you. And what you can also do is, if we went back, and this won't be appropriate here, but you could say here, give me 5 semantically, I'm probably messing up the spelling, something horrible. And we can go in, and I don't want to take too long here. You guys can look at this. You can guide it. And the point of this bot is you can take pieces of your page, you could take images from the page, but it's going to help you come across, and like anything else, all of the different categories that you can use for semantic separation, but you can also add and ask it within any of these categories. You can say, because you have your research, write me, headline using psychological triggers, but use the following 3 psychological triggers. Enables you to get outside your own head. We're going to keep building on this, play with it. It's fun, it's actionable, but our goal, all of our goal is really, I don't want this to sound weird or preachy or anything, is really want everybody to get results. Like ultimately, we just want people to use this, use it in your businesses, use their. The goal here is so we understand what's going on behind the scenes. It wouldn't really do anybody much good if we didn't go through all these examples, if you didn't go through the strategy. Could you get somewhere? Yeah, I'm pretty much getting between the bots that we provided you. You can go in and you can come up with better testing inputs just without probably knowing anything than a lot of what I see. And I do that. I can say it pretty definitively because I have a unique vantage point of being able to see what people are testing, not the but what a lot of these agencies, what the agencies come to me with, what kind of stuff they're testing. But if you apply the bots that you're getting, the AI agents that you're getting, along with the strategy, and by the way, I would say that probably applies to everything that we do in life, and probably even way more important than, in the age of AI where everybody thinks that, I don't want to go off on this, that like it's this magic solution. No, this is why I think that this is, just to bring this to full stack marketer in part, if you understand strategy, which everybody here comes and has their own really unique, really powerful backgrounds, and you apply that to a framework and a strategy plus a tool, that's where you get magic. So my personal take is that AI is phenomenal. I'm sure so we all utilize it. These tools are phenomenal, but they won't replace you, and especially as a full stack marketer, because it just won't. It will make your job maybe a little bit easier, but it will not replace what is like thought, strategy. And at any rate, I'll drop like that because I talked long enough. Jason, do you have any parting or anything that you want to bring up?
For that particular tool, it pulls 12 variables from the page and gives you 5 different variables to test that are semantically different from each of those variables, if that makes sense. So, and you can drop a link like you did, and it'll pull from that page, or you can upload a document that has a sales page or sales message in it, or you can upload a research document, and it'll give you variables to test and whatnot.
Can you
So
add up multiple things like research doc plus a URL?
I haven't tried to do that yet, but that should give it more input to work with, and it should help it, I believe. Yeah.
And so the way I would add to that, just there, I love it. So if we look here at the cognitive biases, well, we could apply these same cognitive biases to another section of the page. And I can tell you from my own testing, it's smart enough to be able to do that. Or from your research document, you've already gone through it. So maybe you're looking at your research doc, which you should, right? And you look through it and you say, wow, I think these triggers in this one area, right? And you can give it those biases to pull from. So, I mean, I look here, but going back to the idea of semantic separation, I love this, is that you are absolutely, even if they look similar, and of course, we're just randomly picking here, but you're going to get a whole different result, an emotional response from one bias to another bias, right? This is like a magic tool is going to just get you outside of your own head if you think about it.
Outside of your head. That's the thing that I'm noticing when I was testing this and trying out that everything I've learned in this class so far, as I'm building the tools, which I love doing. I've realized that I'm getting outside of my own head because I may think of a variable or be writing a bunch of headlines, and I'm really only writing about like 3 or 4 different appeals that are going through my mind. But if I use a tool like this, it'll take 12 different variables and give me 5 apiece from those. So it's giving me 60 new options I may not have thought of before. Even if it's giving me the seed of an option, and I can take it and work it however I want.
Yeah, I think it's really, really good point. Very smart point. And the other thing is, my only thing was if you tie that, so that's like, I know Jason's called like the second brain, and you're getting like we talk about getting outside your own head. If you apply this strategically to what you know from your research has a good probability of working because you've got it from real research and real people, and then attach this to it, you have something that, I don't like to use, I'll use an AI explosive or whatever it is, but the point is it gives you the freedom and gives you some ideas that will definitely increase and move the needle. And like I said, without giving like a preview, I believe that what we're going to show you next week is something I use all the time and going to make all of this even easier. And that's the goal here, is I want you to really understand at a deep level the strategy and exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. I believe if you know that, you'll apply it to everything you do. And I don't mean that to sound so broad, but I really do. Even if you weren't testing and you were writing copy or writing ads, and we'll sort of tie into that. But if you understand that and then apply these tools, they can be really powerful. So I appreciate everybody sticking around. And hopefully this was very helpful for everyone. If you have any questions or follow-up, feel free to post them in the group. And like I said at the beginning, the whole goal is a roadmap so that you have the tools where you feel confident, even if testing wasn't your thing or you didn't feel comfortable. I want you to feel comfortable by the end of this, because I can tell you, and I promise I'll leave with this statement, that the people that I see in this group and people participating have the ability and knowledge to do this than a lot of people putting themselves out there and putting out their shingle as being CROs. And that's just not puffery or me trying to pat somebody on the back. It's just based upon what I've seen. So I really hope everybody will use it. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to post. And more importantly, Happy New Year to everybody.
You too.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, guys, I'm gonna stop this. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Thanks, Jason, Brian.
So much. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.